we all go through transitions in our life. The question is, how do you handle the transition? Are you handling it with grace, or are you handling it with a lot of ego and fear? That's like, which way are we going? Which direction we choose? Which path are we taking? This choice matters. I'm Lisa Taylor, and I support people in finding the clarity and the consistency and the confidence to live by the law of God, to live by the law of good, otherwise known as divine science. And I have been in so many different transitions in my life where the opportunity to let go has come up for me, and I have struggled and struggled and struggled, and sometimes for years have not gone through the transition well. Let's just say, well, I wonder if in your life you're going through a transition, or if you notice you're going through a transition or in a transition point in your life, and there are things that we could be letting go of in those moments that we're not letting go of. Or there are alliances that we have that we could shift and transition and redeem to be alliances with God rather than alliances with material supports. Because the world would have us be supported by our externals, and God would have us be supported by spirit. So if we are supported by spirit, the external transitions or translations or shifts don't scare us as much. We don't feel as much loss if something changes in the external world when we know that God is the source of our identity. If our identity is wrapped up in a job and we lose the job, it feels like a loss of identity. If we know that our identity is derived from and governed by and supported by God, then we lose a job. It's like, okay, opportunity to see a new expression in our life. We see it as an opportunity rather than a loss of our identity. So I invite us. I look at what Jesus gave us in his example, in the way he walks through the crucifixion, as kind of an example of that's a pretty big transition. I mean, a lot of us are not facing that. We're not being crucified in that way. We go through smaller, what feel like crucifixions in our lives. Everybody does. So let's look at the example of how he walks through that transition and what does he model for us. If he is the way shower and we are to follow his example, it's like, okay, let's take an inspired look at that and see what we see. So when he knows he's going to be crucified, and he tells people that he is, and then it comes to that moment in Gethsemane where he is sorrowful. He has a sorrowful heart, and he asks his inner circle for support. He said, will you pray with me? And he goes over to pray. But what is he doing in that moment? He recognizes that his heart is sorrowful, a very human moment, right? And he asks his inner circle for support. How many of us resist doing that? How many of us don't reach out for help and support when we need it? And so he asks for support, and then he goes over and he falls on his knees. And what's the next thing that happens? He looks up to God, and he says, he looks up, you know what I love about look up, look in, look out. He looks up and he said, if this cup can pass from me, God, Father, please, Abba, Father, like if this cup can pass for me, I kind of like that, but not as my will, but as thine be done. So he's willing, even in that moment, as he's looking up to God, he's saying, if you could let this cup pass for me, I would like that. I'm kind of liking this human experience, but I'm willing to give that up, because if this is what the need is, because if this is what you are asking of me and what your will is, I'm willing to do your will. I'm willing to give all for Christ, right? I'm willing to give up the human sense of things. So are we willing to do that? Are we willing to yield to God's will? That's not saying, are you willing to give up your life? It's just saying, are you willing to give up a material sense of life for a divine sense of life? And then what's the next step that he says? He looks in and he says, I'm willing to give it up. I'm willing to give all, like, take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt. And that's that place of looking in and saying, I'm willing to give it up. And then he says, he comes and he finds the disciples sleeping, who he had asked for support. And his friends essentially betray him in that hour of need. And he's willing to give up even that sense of human support. Well, at some point, we're going to be challenged to recognize that our support doesn't come from the human experience. It doesn't come from it's not sourced in the human, I should say, because we're going to experience it humanly, but it's not sourced there. The source of our support is always divine. And when we recognize that, then, as we said before, if the material view of it changes, it doesn't feel like a loss. And we get to look out and see the expression of divine love meeting the human need in every moment, knowing that the source of that is divine love, God. So it's this wonderful sort of arc of look up, look in, be willing to let go, look out, see the evidence of God's support and God's love reflecting back to us humanly, and carry us through that transition that sometimes feels like a big challenge. And there's no doubt about that. We face big transitions. We all face them. So recognize that you're in a transition when you are, and recognize who you're being in the transition. And look at Jesus' example as a way of like, look up, see who God is, recognize the power of God and all the support you're getting from God. Look in, see if you're still clinging to an external or you're willing to release that to rely on spirit, and then look out and see the evidence of that spiritual alignment, spiritual at one-ment reflected back to you in your human experience. And we get to move through these transition points more quickly so that we get to be the full expression of our identity, of our true spiritual identity as known in God. So lots of love. If you have any questions about sort of joining Morning Metaphys, or I tend to give the getfreesupport.com address, but somebody reminded me recently that sometimes people don't know where to go. So you can always go to lisataylorcs.com to go to my website and to sign up for that free week of Morning Metaphys. You can go to that. There's a button right in the upper right or right in the center if you're on your phone. But lisataylorcs.com gives you access to all the things that we do here. So feel free to check that out. Write the word transition in the comments. If you are willing to observe yourself in transition moments in your life, and you're willing to redeem those moments by looking to God, write the word transition in the comments if you are claiming that for yourself. All right, lots of love. Talk to you later.